Hey everyone, Gravity here. Before the video begins, I simply ask that if you enjoy my content to hit that subscribe button below. Nowhere else on YouTube are you going to find a Battlefield player who's played with teams competitively since Battlefield 1942, nearly 18 years ago. Don't forget to subscribe, and please enjoy the video. Over the nearly 20-year history of the Battlefield franchise, there have been many great maps worthy of praise. Some maps become legendary, icons themselves of the Battlefield series and worth remembering for their balance, uniqueness, and special gameplay. This is the story of the...
They lie to you, GI. You know you cannot win this war. They will give you a medal, GI, but only after you are dead. GI. Your airplanes bomb your own men. You are not safe here. Defect, GI. It is a very good idea to leave a sinking ship.
Battlefield Vietnam was a game that offered many firsts to the series, even among its maps. From the subterranean environments of Saigon and Cedar Falls to the jungles of Ho Chi Minh Trail and Cambodian Incursion, there just always seems to be something unique about Vietnam. One of the most interesting details about the game's maps is that on 2 occasions, there are actually 2 different versions of the same map. These are the infantry-based urban maps of Quang Tri 1968 and its 1972 variant, and Hue 1968 and its own variant, Reclaiming Hue. These maps reflected the battles in the same locations during the ongoing war, and as such, while each map has the same basic layout, changes to lighting, flag positions, vehicles, and increased levels of destruction form the differences between them. And while both versions of Quang Tri are stellar maps, the same cannot be said for Hue. In fact, Hue is an example, the only example in the Battlefield series where minor differences between the versions are so significant that one version can be called one of the best of Battlefield and the other one of the worst. Welcome to Hue 1968 and Reclaiming Hue. Starting with Hue 1968, even a simple map overview should make it clear that it is an infantry-focused map. House-to-house and building-to-building fighting is the name of the game, with a number of homes, warehouses, and large temples dominating the environment. The strength of this map lies in both its flag layout and its strong defensible positions. Players must check building by building in order to avoid getting caught by a sneaky camper on a higher floor, or just flanked by opposing players checking for the same. The spacing between the buildings is actually fairly large, and running across the open street could mean death. Overall, DICE nailed the gritty and tough nature of the real battle. On this 6-flag map, each team begins the round with only their respective bridge flags. These bridge flags are the source of nearly all vehicles on the map and have a longer capture time than other flags. On Hue 1968, it is the NVA who have the armor advantage, possessing a BTR-60, a T-54 tank, and a rocket truck. The ARVN side begins with 1 Patton tank and 1 almost pointless M113 APC. Should these main bases be taken, additional armor will not spawn. The 4 flags within the city's outer walls are each positioned extremely well, forcing players to spread out amongst the entirety of the playable map. The most important flag on the map, and by far the most popular, is the Purple Palace, located in the dead center of Hue. An imposing structure based on the actual city's Imperial Gate, it is extremely defensible, with only 2 entrances along the wall. Players could climb the stairs along the wall and use it to fire on other enemies moving along a huge portion of the map, and, if they wanted to even be higher up, could climb the building's center staircase to the top floor. The controlling team not only gained this great map position, but the flag also would spawn an additional APC and tank. However, another great thing about these new vehicles was that they had to spawn outside the palace walls, meaning that even with the flag advantage, it was commonplace to have the opposing team take these vehicles as they tried to push through the gates inside. At the very northwest of the map is the Pagoda Flag. Although this cool looking flag is rather unremarkable, it was an easy capture and a simple reason to push this area. Player spawns here are unfortunately easy to predict, so this flag tended to go back and forth frequently. East of the palace is the police station near a collection of warehouses. Heavy street fighting was common on this flag, as the distance between it and the palace and the NVA bridge flags was short and new enemies and new vehicles were always on the way. Some barbed wire helped defend the capture radius, but the flag was still fairly exposed along the street. Finally, at the south end of the city, the Citadel flag rested atop a massive stone complex that saw heavy fighting throughout the rounds. Jeeps and even armored vehicles could make their way up to the top of the Citadel via the built-in ramps, and could be used to help push or defend the flag. Additionally, small tunnels with interior ladders granted access to the flag watchtowers and could be used for another flank or escape route, provided no one was watching. Overall, Hue is a fairly simple and straightforward map that is just expertly designed. The great thing about it is the pacing and the cover. You could always count on seeing multiple enemies on flags, but you could always choose a unique attack route to get there. Multiple flags at a time had a small grind, but you could always push around to the others and fight a less chaotic battle. You had to keep an eye on buildings, as the terrain made it great for sniper play, but the draw distance and lighting meant you weren't getting shot across the map. It is just a perfect urban map, and it is one of Battlefield Vietnam's best. But now we have an interesting problem. A second version of this map exists, which was also part of the base game, Reclaiming Hue. And this is simply, without question, one of the worst maps in the game for a very simple reason. On the surface, it might not seem so obvious. The lighting is objectively brighter and more clear. The environment and the building locations are largely the same, and there is no giant addition of vehicles. So what makes this version so different from the first? Quite simply, it is this flag layout. I am giving you a minute here to look at this and theorycraft where this is going. Let's do this. All it takes is one experience on the Arvin side of Reclaiming Hue for 99% of players to go, fuck it, I'm out. These are the map's flag locations at the start of the round. The NVA side has 5 pre-captured flags, all within the city walls, while the Arvin side starts the round with everything and everyone on one oncoming bridge. So here we go, a 32 vs 32 player round begins. The Arvin, with 2 tanks, 2 APCs, and 1 Jeep, should be able to break through freely, right? Fucking wrong. First, the tanks are ahead of the Jeeps, so they need to haul ass up the road or get out of the way. Second, there is a tank carcass on the right side of the bridge, which means that the 2 tanks need to get bottlenecked before making it to the end, and that doesn't include the time spent ramming team vehicles or just trying to get out of the way of friendly infantry trying to run ahead. Third, guess what? The headquarters flag just past the end of the bridge literally spawns enemy players 10 feet away from the bridge, meaning that it doesn't fucking matter how fast some of the Arvin vehicles think they are going to get out. It was guaranteed that a solid chunk of NVA players not only were on the edge of the bridge, but already had thrown down landmines or TNT or had RPGs at the ready. The landmines of Vietnam one-shot vehicles. One mine equals one kill, a holdover from BF 1942. Fourth, let's now factor in the lack of revives and squad spawns of Vietnam. The ARVN players killed on the bridge must spawn further back near the South Bridge flag. The NVA troops could literally spawn on top of the bridge, meaning in order to break through, some serious kill sprees needed to happen on this low ground. Fifth, now let's add some more bullshit into this. This is a view from the ARVN South Bridge spawn. You need to press forward, but what can you see from this angle? That's right, it's another fucking NVA flag! The West Citadel to be exact, and if you guess that the NVA could immediately spawn up there and look over the wall at the start of the round, you are so damn right. Snipers, rockets, AK-47 shots, grenades, everything, it's coming over that fucking wall. Think of what it is like to push up the stairs of Operation Metro. Now make it tighter, add a few tanks, and add more explosives. Sixth, more explosives you say? Sure did. This takes place outside. Mortars are a thing and they have huge splash damage. Rounds began on Hue and the mortars were instant. You have to remember, this isn't a few players here, this is a 32-man team, and the addition of 3 or 4 mortars on this map was absolutely soul-crushing to be against. You'd spawn, take 2 steps, die, and repeat for 15 minutes or so. This is, once again, in addition to the RPGs and all of the other junk shooting from the wall. 7th, are you still with me? Yes, there is more. The NVA team actually have 2 tanks and an APC of their own on Reclaiming Hue. One tank spawns in front of the Purple Palace, while the other spawns on top of the East Citadel flag. Yes, there are 2 flags here in this version, and it is literally less than a 30-second drive from the South Bridge. Short enough to meet with the ARVN patent tanks should they actually make it down the ramp. This map had one philosophy: try. Try to break out. And if you didn't in the first 2 minutes, then 95% of the time, you are fucked. Rarely, and I mean rarely, a player could somehow sneak a jeep through off the start if the NVA team was really full of clueless morons. But this oftentimes didn't even matter. Remember, this occurs at the absolute start of the round. Some players are still loading in, others are getting back from being AFK, and all it takes is someone to have a delayed spawn at a back flag, and that 1 or 2 man breakthrough, with no one able to spawn in on them, is toast. In this game's prime, when players knew the map and how to defend the bridge early and set mines, a catastrophe doesn't begin to describe it. Do you know how some players tried to break out on this map during this clusterfuck? They hopped the bridge. That's right, they jumped off it immediately after spawning. Once in the water, some players could swim toward the edge of the bridge and attack NVA infantry there. That is, unless there were already players waiting there below the bridge for swimmers, which there usually were. This is also a game where sidearms in the water did not exist. If they were lucky to survive, a small hole in the wall could be entered as an alternative to the bridge gate. But it leads right to this flag. Players always watched it and had betties down every time. However, it was the extremely smart players who didn't go for the swim to the front. They went for the long game. I shit you not, players, usually 2 or 3 at a time, would swim the entire distance of the city's surrounding river or hop onto the low ground along the wall. and make their way to the northeastern bridge where the NVA main flag would be on Hue 1968. They would enter at this section of the wall and make their way to either the pagoda, the palace, or the East Citadel flag. And once captured, the entire Arvin team knew to spawn there ASAP, and then the map could then finally be played like normal. But, as with all Battlefield games, there are those dedicated players. Those few who do the unglamorous job for the sake of the team, and Vietnam was no exception. On Reclaiming Hue, the long flank was a known strategy, and usually there was an NVA player or two that would spend their entire round sitting on this back bridge waiting for the swimmers and watching the land. You couldn't possibly miss seeing them approaching. The terrain before you reached the bridge was a straight shoot, and a prone player had the easy advantage. So frequently, even the last-ditch cheesy way to break out had a tendency to be foiled. Reclaiming Hue, in the unfathomable event that the Arvin team broke out, could be a decent map. I mean, in that scenario, it largely would play similar to the 1968 variant. However, once again the flag positions matter. The removal of the Northeast Bridge flag and the police station meant that next to no combat occurred in that quarter. Instead, on Reclaiming Hue, the battle largely rotates between the headquarters and the newly split East and West Citadel flags, which are honestly a camp and rocket fest. First, the terrain on the Citadel is largely flat, with a few ramps and stairs to get to the top. But in order to move from section to section, players must pass through tiny gates. And you guessed it, with multiple players from each team fighting up here, it is a campfest, with all sorts of anti-personnel equipment lining the gates. Oh, and then there's still that fucking tank that spawns up on the East Citadel. The thing about Hue 68 and Reclaiming Hue is that here in Battlefield Vietnam, these maps embody a super important concept. That flag position on maps matters stupendously. Here are two maps with largely the same environment, and one of them is a total nightmare. It also demonstrates the importance, albeit it only happened later with Al Marj in Battlefield 5, of having multiple versions of a map in the same game, even if it's temporary, because it proves that with some variation, some maps can either be made great or made terrible. In the case of Hue 1968, players can experience a strongly balanced and well-paced infantry map, featuring enough vehicles to make a difference and enough buildings and high ground to explore and provide unique combat environments. Reclaiming Hue, however, is a complete fucking disaster, ultimately owed to the dumbest breakthrough flag layout in Battlefield history. Between Vietnam's good hit reg, low player health pool, NVA flag and spawn points near the bridge, closeness of the Citadel to the bridge itself, and only one single legitimate path to enter the city walls, Reclaiming Hue is a map variant which should have had its flags altered or been patched straight out of existence. So there you have it. In one Battlefield game, there exists one of the best maps of Battlefield, and also one of the absolute worst. In this case, it just so happens that they are both called Hue.